guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and you are watching The Nerdy Grail. Now, this is going to be the final video that I'll upload in 2024, because then we will be in 2025, and I cannot believe that I'm actually saying that this year is already over. It's unbelievable. But what am I going to be talking about in this video? Well, this is going to be also the final movie review of 2024, and I wasn't expecting to make this. But if you have watched my last video where I did a ranking of all 21 movies that I saw in 2024, I did mention one in particular that I said I wasn't expecting to be so high on the list, but I knew I was going to really enjoy it, and I was going to give you a full-on movie review of it. What movie was that? Well, I just showed it. I am going to be talking about Abigail, a movie that was so fun. Ever since I saw the trailer, the concept about it just blew me away. You know, kidnappers who kidnap this little girl, but it turns out that actually the joke's on them because the little girl is actually a vampire and she's coming for them instead. So I just thought that's got to be a bit of fun. And it's listed as a comedy horror, and you know, I love me a bit of comedy. Even though I'm not too thrilled on horror, I do love a good comedy film, and this film was actually quite funny in places as well. Really tense as well. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing a review. I know it's late because this came out back in April, but I've only just seen it and I need to talk about it. But this is going to be a movie review on the movie Abigail. How's this going to work? Well, we're going to talk about lots of different things in this video. We're going to start by talking a bit about the background of this film, you know, how it came to be and what is it really about. We're then going to be talking about the cast, because there is a very good cast of characters in this. From all the kidnappers having their own personalities, the antagonists, the protagonists. Oh, it's just amazing. And then finally, we are going to also talk about the positives, because you've got to talk about the positives. And we're also going to talk about the negatives of this movie as well, because there was a couple of things that I would have liked to be a little bit better, but there's not many, because I really enjoyed this film, as you might have seen in my ranking video. And then I'm just going to give you my final thoughts on what I thought of this movie as a whole. So let's waste no more time. We're going to jump straight into this video, and we are going to start by having a little bit of a discussion of the background of Abigail. So let's start by having a little look at the background behind this, well, superstar of a movie known as Abigail. I really enjoyed this movie. And I found out a little bit more about it after watching the film, because I had heard a lot about it, but I just went into it thinking this is just another horror movie of the year with a little bit of a twist. But it's a lot more to it than just that. So this is an American horror comedy movie, listed as both a comedy and a horror, which is quite a nice little combination. I did have to write a few notes down for this as well. So this is being directed by Tyler Gillett and also Matt Bettinelli-Olpin. So two directors behind this, and they've done a fantastic job in directing this movie. The direction was perfect. It was almost flawless. And I don't say that lightly when it comes to films. I really enjoyed it. That's why it was 4th on my movie list. But it's actually also, and I didn't know this at the time, but it is based on and is also a reimagining of a 1936 Universal Classic Monsters film known as Dracula's Daughter. And I generally did not know that. I have heard of Dracula's Daughter, but I didn't think that this was linked to it in any way or based on it or a reimagining. I didn't know there was anything to do with that. So that was really interesting to find out, actually. And it does sort of make sense as well. There's a bit of a, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a plot twist at the end of the movie. You can kind of see it coming. And generally when you do a film about a vampire, you tend to find that Dracula will appear in some way, shape or form. So it wasn't hard to put 2 and 2 together. But the core main star of this, I'll talk a little bit more about her in the cast section of this review. But Alicia Weir, she did a fantastic job as Abigail. She's our star. She's our main antagonist. She does become a tiny bit of a protagonist at the end. But yeah, she's the core antagonist of the film. She does a brilliant job. She's not been in a lot. She's like an up-and-coming star. I've only seen her in 2 things, one of those being Abigail, the other being the Matilda, the musical from a couple of years ago, where she played Matilda, and she did a fantastic job in that. And I have heard that there's a couple of other films she's in, so I would like to check those out as well. But she did a fantastic job. But I'll talk more about her in the cast section. But this has got a fairly decently sized cast. but yet small enough to where you can get to know the characters a lot more, which I quite like. But one thing of note in particular about this film, again, didn't know this at the time, but I did think it was kind of weird that he did get killed off quite soon into the film, but it makes sense now as well, is the actor Angus Cloud, who plays a character called Dean in the film. Really funny character, mind. He's like the driver of the kidnappers, so he drives them to location to get Abigail, drives them back. He's not the most intelligent, but he is a fun character. But unfortunately, shortly after wrapping up his scenes on July 31st in 2023, he did sadly pass away. But what I did think was really, really sweet is at the end of this movie, they do dedicate this film to him, and like his signature pops up at the end as well. So it was a really nice, touching moment. So that was really, really sweet. But he did a fantastic job for what it's worth. So rest in peace. You did a fantastic job, mate. Really good job. And then the composer, the music in this, I haven't stopped listening to the final song that plays at the end of Abigail. I've listened to it on loop literally for the last 24 hours. I think it's called Burn My Tongue. Brian Tyler does the musical score in this. He's the composer. And he's worked with the directors before, and he did a fantastic job. And like I said, it's a brilliant, brilliant song. And I just can't stop listening to it. So there's lots of different sections to this that I think is really, really good. And the visuals within this, because it's all confined to just one little mansion, is really, really good. So you get that claustrophobic feel, which is a good thing. But I'll discuss that a little bit more in the positive section. But yeah, now I've given you a bit of a background. Let's pause this a sec, and we're going to jump straight in, and we're going to discuss this amazing cast that there is in the film Abigail, because they are brilliant. Okay, so let's have a little look now at the cast of this amazing movie, because it is the cast that truly holds this film and keeps you engaged from start to finish, if I'm being perfectly honest. There is a decent-sized cast, but it's also small enough to where you do truly feel connected to each and every one of them, and they have their own personalities, which I really, really like. So firstly are the main kidnapper of... There's 6 kidnappers. The main kidnapper, who is your antagonist, who then becomes your protagonist by the end, is played by Melissa Barrera, who is codenamed as Joey, because each of the kidnappers need a code name so that, you know, no one finds out their real identities and comes after them and things like that. So she's codenamed as Joey, but her actual name is Anna. Anna Lucia Cruz is what we find out, because Abigail spills the beans on all of them by the end. We find out that she's a former combat medic who worked in the army, but she's also, and they constantly reference this throughout, she is a recovering drug addict as well. She was addicted to morphine, and we find out that actually each of them is tied to Abigail's father in some way, shape or form. Like, for example, for Joey, she apparently worked on someone who was very close to Christophe Lazar, who is Abigail's father, and accidentally nicked an artery. So that's how she's getting all tangled up in all this. We also find out that she has a son who's around Abigail's age, well, supposed age of 12-year-old girl, called Caleb, who she's been separated from, and she's hoping to use her side of the money that she gets from the kidnapping in order to reunite with him. Joey is a very, very good character. She's cool, she's calm, she's collected, she's quite quirky as well, she's funny. I quite like her. She's probably one of my favourites of the core kidnappers. The other then main kidnapper is played by Dan Stevens. His name is Frank, and he is an antagonist, then a slight protagonist, and then he is a core antagonist at the end. He sort of flip-flops between them all. He's very untrustworthy. We do find out that his actual name is Adam Barrett, who is a former detective who supposedly worked for Abigail's father. And he's corrupt. And then obviously ends up joining this gang of criminals and joins in kidnapping Abigail. He's an interesting character. But yeah, like I said, he starts off as an antagonist because he's one of the kidnappers. But then when Abigail goes on the rampage, he's your protagonist. You hope that he survives. But then at the end of the movie, bit of a spoiler, he becomes a vampire and then fights back against Abigail and Joey and the others, you know. So he becomes your antagonist again. But your core antagonist, actually, even more so than Abigail. But yeah, so he's an interesting character. He's really, really cool. He has one of the funniest lines of the entire movie. He's taking the mick out of another one of the kidnappers called Sammy. He asked her to go get some garlic to defend themselves against Abigail. She comes back with a pile of onions, and he just says, "Sammy, those are fucking onions." And I burst out laughing. My fiance loved that as well. It was brilliant. It was hilarious. Loved it. Then another one of the core kidnappers, because out of the 6 kidnappers, only 3 of them get an awful lot to do. The final one is played by Catherine Newton, who plays a character called Sammy, who we find out her actual name is called Jessica. She's like a hacker. She's like the tech whiz sort of thing. She can like hack stuff. She's quite talented. She's a little bit ditzy though, but that's fine. Like I said, they've all got their own personalities, so it's really, really nice. You've got something to hold on to and connect to them. But yeah, so she's really talented. She can hack anything, but she is a little bit ditzy, like I said about the onions and garlic mix-up. But apparently she does come from quite a wealthy family, so you would think she wouldn't really need the money. But apparently she did try to hack her own parents, steal their money, and then stole a substantial amount from a subsidiary of Christophe Lazare, which is how she's tangled up in all this. Mainly because she was bored, didn't get enough attention and excitement in her life. So yeah, she gets mixed up in all these things. She actually ends up getting bitten by Abigail during the film and gets possessed by Abigail, partly becoming a vampire for a brief moment. I quite liked Sammy. She was a cool character as well. Like I said, all the kidnappers are, you feel for them in one way, shape or form once Abigail gets let loose. Then you got the rest of the kidnappers, the last 3. We don't actually get as much detail about them, unfortunately, but they are still good. So the first one you've got is played by Will Collette, called Rickles. The only thing that we sort of find out about him is that he used to work for the military, so he could have been linked some way to Joey, who was a former medic. Within that, he gets killed off quite early on. I think he's the second one of the kidnappers to get killed off, so unfortunately you don't get to see him for very long. Another one you've got then obviously is played by Angus Cloud, who was Dean, who obviously he passed away sadly. He's a funny guy. He's a bit ditzy. He's a bit of a clown. He was the main getaway driver and all. He's a cool character. I wish he didn't get killed off so soon, but bless him, and he did a fantastic job for what it's worth, so well done. There's a funny scene where he teases Sammy. He's like hiding in her bedroom, and like scares her. He's like wearing like a bear mask, I think, and Sammy doesn't like that, but yeah, that was funny. That was a funny scene. Then you got a character known as Peter, who, I didn't realise this at the time, is actually played by 2 different actors depending on the version, supposedly. I watched the US version, so he's played by Kevin Durand, but apparently he's played by Brett Goldstein in the UK version. Even though I'm from the UK, but yeah, I watched the US version, but it is fine. He's like a big muscle man. He's mostly brawn over brains, that sort of character. He's a nice, cool character, but yeah, he doesn't do an awful lot. He is the muscle man. There's a scene when they first get locked up, when they first realise that they can't escape, and there's these iron gates, and he just charges straight at them. He thinks that's going to work, and he flies off, and then he just says, "It's locked." It's like, yeah, no duh, it's locked. But it's like, yeah, he's funny, I like him. And then you've got Christophe Lazare, who is Abigail's father, played by Matthew Goad, who only appears at the end of the movie. It's very clear that he's Dracula. They don't actually say that he's Dracula, but they make it clear that he is, and we're pretty certain he is, because he does sort of reference that he actually says, "I have gone over countless names over the years." That he's Dracula, okay? They don't say it, but he is Dracula, and it makes sense. He's the head vampire. He's Abigail's father. He's this mystery man who supposedly needs to pay the $50 million to the kidnappers to let his daughter go, so on and so forth. He's only in one scene. He is very intimidating, I will admit, a very intimidating character. He does a decent job for what it's worth, but he's only in the last scene. And then we've got the one who hires all the kidnappers, sort of the ringleader at the start, played by Giancarlo Esposito. Fantastic actor. He's been in loads like The Mandalorian, and the list can go on. He plays a character called Lambert, who's the one who hires the kidnappers, and he's like the head. He gives them the rules that they need. He gives them the identities, tells them what they need to do, and then vanishes, and then comes back at the end. We find out he's secretly been watching them, and that he is actually a vampire himself, what he's actually intending is for the kidnappers to sort of kill Abigail. He wants her dead as retribution for some previous grievances that he's had with her father, Christoph. So that was a bit of a... It was kind of a twist, but I don't know. He seemed a bit sketchy at the start, so I knew there was going to be something about him that was off. So even though it was kind of a twist, it sort of wasn't in my head. I knew he was coming back at some point. To be a vampire was an interesting one, but yeah. So that is your core cast of characters. However, there is one, obviously, I haven't talked about, and I've got to talk about her. I'm talking about Alicia Weir, who plays our core antagonist, and slight protagonist at the end, Abigail. I mean, come on. She is brilliant in this movie. Hats off to you. You did a fantastic job as Abigail. Abigail in this film, she starts off obviously the innocent 12-year-old girl. You know, she's all weak and helpless and she's screaming for help. But it's all an act. You know, she set it all up. She wanted to be kidnapped because she just wants to have fun, really. And then the conversation she has with Joey, you know, oh, please make sure they don't hurt me. You're not going to hurt me. The information she sneakily tries to find out. She tries to turn the cast against each other. It's really clever, and you can see in her eyes that she knows what she's doing, and it's brilliant. The way she manipulates them, like manipulates Joey right at the start to remove her blindfold and make her more comfortable in the bed, like loose her handcuffs and put them in front of her rather than tied behind her back. So clever. And then when she breaks out and turns full vampire, she's terrifying. She's cheeky as well, really quirky. Like there's a scene where she's locked up in a cage and she's still, even though they all know that she's a vampire and she's literally killed two of their friends, she's still pretending. She's like, oh, please let me out. Oh, I'm scared. And then Joey's just like, cut the crap. But you're very good at pretending to be a little girl. And she just like courtesies and she's like, oh, thank you. She's brilliant. So you did a fantastic job. One of the best, in my opinion, antagonists in a while in a movie. Like, she gives me the vibes of the wolf from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in terms of how snarky they are and quirky and, you know, but intense and sinister at the same time. Like when she's threatening all of them, she's like no mercy at all. I also love they bring back the garlic joke as well, where she takes the garlic from Sammy, sniffs it, and is like, that's not garlic, because it's not, it's onions. So it's quite funny. There's a scene where she's dancing with a headless corpse, doesn't notice them, and then sees them all come in, and she's like, oh dear, can't we just talk this out, guys? And it's like, oh, it's brilliant, I love it. So yeah, she did a fantastic job. So every cast member did fantastic. But that is my little talk on the cast. Now I'm going to break down both the positives and the negatives of Abigail. So now let's have a little look at the positives and negatives behind Abigail. So starting obviously with the positives, there's lots of positives. Firstly, the claustrophobic atmosphere that you get throughout the entire film is brilliant. You know, it literally starts off with Abigail doing ballet in a theatre to herself, straight to her house where the kidnappers are already there. They instantly get her, bring her to this mansion in the middle of nowhere, and then you spend the rest of your film in this mansion. Really tight corridors, very narrow. There's like catacombs and libraries and all sorts. It's scary stuff. And then you see like Abigail like doing ballerina twirls everywhere. It's like, and her jumping from the banisters and all sorts. It's really, really good and builds up that tension by having such a claustrophobic environment to work in. And that's when horrors are at their best, like in Speak No Evil. So I think they did a fantastic job there in building the atmosphere. So I thought having it all set there is a good thing in that regard. Because sometimes having limited locations and settings can be, you know, not beneficial to a film, but it really works here. Because it's supposed to be almost like a Home Alone style gone wrong, really. But it's done really, really well. Another positive is the score, like I said. The music, the eerie tension that it builds. The song at the end is fantastic and I can't stop listening to it. So I think that is brilliant as well. The cast, I've already discussed the cast, so I'm not going to go into much detail on it. The cast is fantastic. You know, to have a cast of characters that you care about in one way, shape or form, every single one of them, mind, all the kidnappers, Abigail, you know, Lambert, just all of them. I mean, hell, even Dracula, even though it's not Dracula, it is Dracula. Christophe Lazar, I'll just call him that. Christophe Lazar, played by Matthew Goad at the end, even he was cool, and he was only in one scene. So I thought it was brilliant. So to care about all the characters and make all your characters likable, and when I say likable, I mean obviously some of them you're like, ooh, I wish you would, you know, get it because you're mean like that. But what I mean is like you like them still though, you know. You know, when they're finally gone, you're a bit like, oh, I mean, I wanted you to, but now there's something lost from the movie, you know, and that's brilliant, and that's how you do a cast of characters. So in some ways, like I said, having a smaller cast is a benefit. So I thought that was brilliant. So big one up there, and like I said, like it's also a fairly gory film. You know, this is rated 18, and there is a high level of gore, especially when like Abigail's like biting people on the neck and this, that, and the other. But it's not as gory as you would expect it to be. Like I said, it's not Terrifier levels, but it is fairly gory, you know, but not like sickeningly gory. So that's quite interesting as well. And the visuals of the vampire look as well, like the way Abigail's eye color changes, the teeth, it's scary stuff. Her costume as well that she wears, that ballerina tutu, gets more and more bloody as the film goes on, showing how much more she's killing people and doing things. It starts off fairly white with a little bit of blood, then it gets redder and redder and redder. It's really, really interesting. So I must admit, yeah, it's really, really good. And just overall the plot of the film as well, I think was fairly solid. The concept, you know, kidnappers kidnap 12-year-old girl. They think they're going to win, they're going to get their money. But actually, plot twist, little girl's a vampire, and actually she's going to hunt them down instead. And they're going to wish that she shows them mercy rather than them show her mercy. It's brilliant, and I like it. And you know, simple concept, but a unique concept at the same time. Done perfectly. Can't say no more about it. I mean, as for negatives, there's generally not too many negatives I can safely say about this movie. I mean, the one thing I will say is, unfortunately, this film was a little bit predictable. And by that, both me and my fiance, we predicted it. I mean, my fiance said it first, but I was fairly certain this was going to happen as well. We clocked instantly who was going to survive this movie instantly. We knew for a fact, I mean, spoilers, but the only one to survive this movie, apart from Abigail, is Joey. Joey is the only one of the kidnappers to survive. But that was like seen from the get-go because they gave her the backstory with her son. They gave her the emotional connection to Abigail, like she was the only one showing any sort of care towards Abigail. So we knew that Abigail was going to sort of have a little bit of a soft spot towards her, which she does. And then that's why she gets let go at the end, because she defends Joey to her father, who her father wants to just kill her. But Abigail's like, no, she helped me. You know, she was there when you weren't. That sort of thing. So that is probably my biggest negative. Is you could predict this film, and you could predict that you were going to see Abigail's father at the end. Lambert, you know, played by Giancarlo Esposito, you sort of already knew there was something dodgy about him. So that's what I mean. That's the only negative, I think, of this film, if I'm being honest, is that it's a predictable movie, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you would like a few more surprises. Like, there was nothing in that film that really shocked me in terms of I didn't expect that coming, you know? And I think that was also a problem with showing the fact that Abigail was a vampire in the trailers. You should have hidden that. Like, just shown the scenes of her as a defenseless little girl. And then when you watch the film, you then discover she's a vampire, because that would have been a great twist for the movie. But yeah, so that's the core negative, I think. It's just the film's a bit too predictable, if I'm being perfectly honest. It is pretty... And I would say, I also would have liked to have seen... Maybe they could have done like a flash forward of like Joey maybe seeing her son again. Maybe even going to one of Abigail's shows and Abigail giving her like a look. That might have been quite interesting. But yeah, but other than that, I'd say that's about it for the positives and negatives. So let me pause this again and I will quickly sum up my final thoughts about Abigail 2024. We have it. That is a wrap on the final movie review and final video of 2024, reviewing Abigail. I also love the tagline, by the way. Children can be such monsters. But yeah, it was a fantastic movie, a surprisingly fantastic movie. I knew I was going to enjoy this movie, but I didn't expect myself to enjoy it as much as I did. So it was a treat to watch. Bit of a weird pick to watch around Christmas, but I got it for Christmas. So I thought, yeah, gotta watch it. I've been dying to watch it for a long time. What would I rate Abigail on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being it's a terrible movie, and 10 being it was an absolute masterpiece of a movie. I would probably say, on average, I'd give it a 7 or an 8. 7/8. Maybe 7.5, but it was a very, very good movie. I really enjoyed it. Will I be watching this movie again? Definitely will be watching this film again, because I thoroughly enjoyed it. Would I recommend Abigail to anyone who's not seen it? Yeah, I would. Even if you're not a fan of horror, it is just a funny movie as well, and you really like the characters in this movie. So if you like good characters, you will probably like Abigail. So I'd say give it a try, even if you're not a massive fan of horror. I'm not a fan of vampire movies, but this one was brilliant. And it's all down to her. Star of the show, she was. Absolutely brilliant. And I can't recommend it enough. She's going to go on and do big things in the future. I know she is, because she's still early in her career. But that is going to be the Nerdy Grail signing off for now. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up. Comment down below. What are your thoughts on Abigail? Did you watch it? Are you going to watch it? And subscribe if you are new. But for now, this is the Nerdy Girl signing off, and signing off for 2024. I will see you all in the new year. Take care, guys. Bye for now.